Two guys, same city, same age, same paycheck. One of them is worth $1.4 million today. The other one, he's still working the same job, wondering where it all went wrong. The crazy part? They both made what seemed like a smart decision back in 2004. They just made different ones. And for the first 5 years, the guy who lost actually looked like he was winning. Don't go anywhere, because by the end of this video, you're going to see exactly how this happened. And more importantly, you're going to understand something about building wealth that most financial advice completely misses. Let me introduce you to Jake and Marcus. They grew up 2 streets apart in Columbus, Ohio. Both 28 years old in 2004. Both making $58,000 a year. Marcus as a mid-level sales rep, Jake as a project coordinator at a construction firm. Neither of them came from money. No inheritance, no trust funds, no rich uncles quietly pulling strings behind the scenes. But both of them had managed to save $40,000. That's the detail that matters here. $40,000 each sitting in their bank accounts, ready to do something with. They'd been reading about building wealth. Both had heard about investing. Both understood, at least in theory, that money sitting in a savings account was slowly losing value to inflation. They both knew something had to change. The difference? What they believed that $40,000 should become. Marcus believed in something he could see, something tangible, something he could drive past on a Sunday afternoon and say, I own that. He believed in real estate. Jake believed in something quieter, something most people around him thought was either boring or risky. He believed in the stock market, specifically low-cost index funds that track the S&P 500. Same money, same starting line, one race, 2 completely different paths. Marcus moves first. In early 2004, he uses his $40,000 as a 10% down payment on a $400,000 duplex in a working-class neighborhood just outside Columbus. It's not glamorous. The paint is peeling in 2 rooms and the water heater is old. But Marcus can see the potential. He's going to live in one unit and rent out the other. He signs the papers. He gets the keys. He calls his parents. His mom cries a little. His dad tells him he's made the smartest decision of his life. For the first few weeks, Marcus feels like a different person. He talks about it at work, at bars, at family dinners. And I own property now. There's something about real estate, the weight of it, the realness of it, that makes you feel like you've arrived somewhere, like you've done something serious. Jake, meanwhile, opens a brokerage account. He puts his $40,000 into a Vanguard S&P 500 index fund, sets up an automatic monthly contribution of $400 from his paycheck. And then he basically does nothing. He doesn't tell anyone. There's nothing to show. No keys, no address, no photo to post. Just numbers on a screen that go up and down, and mostly mean nothing to him yet. His coworker asks him that Friday what he's been up to. Jake says, not much. And that's the truth. Here's what nobody talks about. The psychological gap between these 2 decisions in the early days is massive. Real estate feels like winning. Stocks feel like waiting. And that difference in feeling shapes everything that comes next. Year 1 arrives. Let's look at the numbers. Marcus is collecting $1,200 a month in rent from his tenant. That sounds great, until you subtract his mortgage payment of $1,950, property taxes, insurance, and a plumbing repair that cost him $800 in October. When you add it all up, Marcus is slightly cash flow negative in year 1. He's paying a few $100s a month out of pocket to own this property. But he's not worried. He's building equity. The property is appreciating. He's playing the long game. Jake's $40,000 in the market has grown to about $44,000. By the end of 2004, a decent year for the S&P 500. He's also added $4,800 from his monthly contributions. His portfolio sits around $48,000. He barely looks at it. He's not excited. He's not worried. He's just consistent. Year 2, year 3. This is where things change. Marcus gets his first difficult tenant. Late rent payments. 2 months of awkward conversations. Then a formal eviction process that costs him $1,400 in legal fees and nearly 3 months of lost rental income. It's stressful in a way he didn't expect. His friends see the duplex. They still think he's doing well. He lets them think that. The S&P 500 has a rough patch in 2005. Jake's portfolio dips slightly. He feels nothing. He doesn't even check it that month. He just keeps his automatic contributions running. $400 every single month, going in regardless of what the market is doing. By the end of year 3, 2007, Marcus's property has appreciated. The neighborhood has improved slightly, and comparable duplexes are now selling for around $440,000. He has a new tenant who pays on time. Things are stabilizing. He feels good. Jake's portfolio, factoring in contributions, reinvested dividends, and compound growth, is sitting at approximately $72,000. Still nothing exciting to look at. Still no one asking him about it at dinner parties. Now we get to year 5, 2009, and this is the part of the story that nobody saw coming. The financial crisis. The worst economic collapse since the Great Depression. And both men are hit, just in very different ways. Jake watches his portfolio fall from around $85,000 to roughly $52,000 in about 8 months. A $33,000 loss on paper. It's brutal to look at. His stomach drops every time he opens the app. His friends are telling him to sell or get out before it goes to zero. His coworker jokes that the stock market is just legalized gambling. Jake does not laugh, but Jake doesn't sell. He keeps his $400 monthly contribution going. He reads enough to understand that if he sells now, the loss becomes real. And that if history means anything at all, this market will recover. He holds on. It is the hardest financial decision he's ever made, and it requires him to do absolutely nothing. Marcus, on the other hand, is watching something different collapse. The housing market. His duplex, which was worth $440,000 just 2 years ago, is now appraised at $310,000. He hasn't sold. He doesn't plan to. But his net equity has been obliterated. His tenant lost their job and stopped paying rent. And Marcus has a vacant unit and a mortgage he has to cover entirely from his own salary for 4 months. Here's the twist, and this is important. Neither man is destroyed. Both survive the crisis. But they survive in very different emotional states. Jake is shaken, but intact. Marcus is exhausted. This is where most people get it wrong. They compare real estate and stocks on paper. Returns, appreciation, rental yield. But they don't account for what these investments cost you emotionally, in time, in stress, in decisions you have to make at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday when a pipe bursts. Year 10, 2014. The recovery has been remarkable. The S&P 500 has not just recovered, it has surged. Jake's portfolio, thanks to his refusal to sell during the crash and his continued monthly contributions throughout the darkest period, is now worth approximately $198,000. 10 years of boring, consistent, automatic investing. Meanwhile, Marcus has rebuilt. His duplex is now worth $480,000. He refinanced during the recovery period and pulled out $60,000 in equity, which he used to put a down payment on a second rental property. A small single-family home he rents out for $1,100 a month. He now owns 2 properties. His net equity across both, factoring in remaining mortgage balances, is around $210,000. On paper, they're almost exactly even. A decade in. Different vehicles, similar destinations. But here's what the numbers don't show. Marcus is spending roughly 6 to 8 hours a month managing his properties. Maintenance calls, tenant communications, lease renewals, a roof repair on the second property that cost $9,000 and wiped out almost a full year of rental profit. And he's not complaining. He actually loves parts of it. But it is work. Real work. And it's work that doesn't end. Jake spent 0 hours managing his portfolio this year. Not one. He checked it occasionally. He increased his monthly contribution to $600 when he got a raise. That's it. His investment requires nothing from him except patience. Here's what nobody talks about. Time is a form of wealth. And every hour Marcus spends managing real estate is an hour he doesn't spend on something else. That's a cost that never shows up in any comparison article. Year 15. 2019. Marcus now owns 3 properties. His total real estate portfolio is valued at roughly $1.1 million. His remaining mortgage balances total about $620,000. Net equity, approximately $480,000. His monthly rental income, after all expenses and mortgage payments, generates about $1,400 in positive cash flow. That's real money. Tangible. Monthly. He can feel it. Jake's portfolio, S&P 500, consistent contributions now at $800 a month, reinvested dividends for 15 years, has grown to approximately $540,000. No cash flow. No monthly check. Just a number that keeps growing in the background like a tree he planted and mostly forgot about. For the first time, Jake feels it. Not jealousy, exactly, but awareness. Marcus has cash flow. Real monthly income from assets. Jake has a bigger number, but he can't touch it without triggering taxes and disrupting compounding. There's a trade-off here that neither of them fully understood. At 28, this is where the compounding versus leverage conversation gets real. Real estate is powered by leverage. Marcus put down $40,000 on a $400,000 asset, and he controlled a $400,000 investment with $40,000. That's a 10-to-1 leverage ratio. When that property appreciated, even modestly, the returns on his actual cash invested were amplified dramatically. The bank's money worked for him. But leverage is a double-edged tool. It amplifies gains, and it amplifies losses. The 2008 crash didn't just reduce Marcus's portfolio. It nearly wiped out his equity entirely because he was leveraged. If the market had gotten worse, or if he'd been forced to sell, he could have lost everything and still owed money. Stocks use compounding. Jake put in $40,000. The market returned roughly 10% annually on average over time. That 10% earned returns. And those returns earned returns. And those returns earned returns. It's slower in the early years, and almost violently powerful in the later ones. It doesn't amplify like leverage does, but it also doesn't cut both ways. Different engines, different risks, different rewards. Year 20. 2024. This is what you've been waiting for. Marcus's real estate portfolio has continued to appreciate. His 3 properties are now collectively valued at approximately $1.65 million. His remaining mortgage balances total around $510,000. Net equity, $1.14 million. Monthly cash flow, after all expenses, roughly $3,200. He also refinanced strategically twice during low-rate periods, which reduced his costs and freed up capital. But here's the full picture. Over 20 years, Marcus spent an estimated $85,000 on repairs, maintenance, property management fees during periods he outsourced, legal fees, vacancy losses, insurance increases, and property tax hikes. And he also spent thousands of hours of his personal time managing, deciding, stressing. It's still a remarkable outcome, but it didn't come free. Jake never checked his portfolio once this week. His total portfolio value, 20 years of S&P 500 index fund investing, consistent monthly contributions, every dividend reinvested through 2 major crashes and multiple corrections, has grown to approximately $1.38 million. He made that money while sleeping, while on vacation, while doing literally anything else. Marcus won on net equity by about $240,000. But Marcus also worked for his money in ways Jake never did. Marcus has cash flow. Jake has pure growth and flexibility. Neither of them lost. Both of them built real wealth from $40,000 and a salary that was never extraordinary. Both of them made a decision at 28 and stuck with it for 20 years. And that's the part of this story that actually matters. Here's the twist nobody saw coming at the beginning of this video. The real answer isn't real estate, and it isn't stocks. The real answer is this: the asset class almost didn't matter. What mattered, what actually determined the outcome, was the decision to invest at all, the decision to stay consistent through the hard years, and the discipline to not blow it when everything felt wrong. Jake didn't win because index funds are magic. He won because he didn't panic sell in 2009 when every instinct told him to, because he kept contributing when the market was down and shares were cheap, because he let time do what money alone cannot. Marcus didn't win because real estate is superior. He won because he was willing to deal with difficult tenants, expensive repairs, and scary market crashes. And he kept going anyway, because he used leverage responsibly, because he reinvested his equity instead of spending it. Take either of those men and give them the opposite investment, but keep their behavior exactly the same, and they probably both still come out ahead. Because the behavior is the strategy. Most people spend years debating real estate versus stocks. They read Reddit threads, they watch YouTube videos, they make spreadsheets, and while they're debating, they're doing nothing. And doing nothing is the only guaranteed way to lose. Now, here's something worth thinking about before you go. What happens if you combine both? Now, what if the real wealth building strategy isn't choosing between real estate and stocks, but using each one for what it's actually best at? Real estate for leverage, cash flow, and tax advantages. Stocks for passive compounding, liquidity, and simplicity. The people who quietly build the most wealth? Many of them aren't all in on one thing. They use real estate to generate cash flow and leverage appreciation. They use stocks to compound wealth passively without lifting a finger. They treat these not as competitors, but as 2 different tools in the same toolbox. That's a conversation for another video. But it's worth sitting with. Here's what I want you to walk away with today. Jake and Marcus both made it. Not because they were smarter than you, not because they had more money, not because they picked the perfect asset, and they made it because they started. They made a decision, and then they honored that decision for 20 years, even when it was uncomfortable, boring, scary, or frustrating. The debate between real estate and stocks is real. The differences matter. Leverage versus compounding, cash flow versus growth, active versus passive, risk profiles and tax treatment. All of it is worth understanding. And you should understand it. But none of that knowledge matters if you're still sitting on the sideline at 35 or 40 or 45, telling yourself you'll figure it out when the timing is right. The timing is never right. The market is never perfectly calm. The real estate market is never perfectly priced. There is no perfect moment. There is only the decision, and then the discipline to follow through. And Jake made his decision in 2004 with a laptop and a brokerage account. Marcus made his with a down payment and a set of keys. What's your $40,000 doing right now? Because the next 20 years are coming either way.